I don't belong here, she whispered, unaware her blind date was a millionaire CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our story. Emma Brooks walked into the restaurant, the sound of hushed conversations and the clinking of silverware filling the air. It was the kind of place where every dish seemed like a piece of art, and the guests exuded an air of confidence she could never relate to. Her second-hand dress clung uncomfortably to her skin, and the worn soles of her shoes made her feel more out of place than ever. She checked her phone for the table number again, table 7. Her heart raced as she glanced around the room, scanning each table, looking for the man she was supposed to meet. As she reached the back of the restaurant, she spotted him, a sharply dressed man sitting alone, engrossed in his phone. He had dark hair, perfectly styled, and seemed to have an aura of self-assuredness about him that made Emma's stomach tighten. That had to be him, she thought. She took a deep breath, pasted a nervous smile on her face, and walked over. "Hi, you must be Kevin? I'm Emma." The man looked up, startled, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment before he blinked and hesitated. His confusion lingered for a second before he responded with a smile. Hi, Emma." Emma, mistaking his hesitation for shyness, took a seat across from him. She tried to smooth over the awkwardness. "I know this is a little strange," she laughed nervously. "Blind dates are weird, right? Jenny told me you might be a bit quiet, but don't worry, I can talk enough for both of us." The man, Kevin, looked at her, clearly a little thrown off by her enthusiasm. But instead of correcting her, he simply smiled and leaned back in his chair. His phone buzzed on the table, but he didn't reach for it. He seemed strangely calm despite the mix-up. "Right. Blind dates are something else," he said, his voice warm, though still slightly reserved. Emma smiled at the compliment, though she didn't really believe him. She could feel the tension in her chest as she fidgeted with her napkin, eager to fill the silence. She took a sip of water and tried to push her nerves aside. "Tell me about you, Kevin. What do you do?" she asked, genuinely interested. The man shifted in his seat slightly. "Oh, I work in tech," he replied, a vague answer that didn't tell her much. "Tech? That's cool," Emma said, trying to sound more engaged. "Like coding? Apps and stuff?" She laughed lightly, but Kevin only smiled faintly. "Something like that," he said, clearly not keen on diving into details. Emma, always the talkative one, launched into a story about her shift at the diner, the customers, and her dream of one day opening her own art studio. As she spoke, she noticed that Kevin wasn't interrupting, wasn't trying to steer the conversation. Instead, he was listening intently. It made her feel a little more comfortable, though the lingering feeling of unease didn't quite disappear. "You're not what I expected," Emma said suddenly, her voice dropping a little. Kevin raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" he asked. She flushed slightly. "Well, Jenny said you were kind of reserved, but you're easy to talk to." Kevin chuckled softly. "You're easy to talk to too," he said, surprising her. Emma beamed at the compliment, her heart easing just a little. She was about to ask him more about his work in tech when her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, her heart sinking when she saw the message. "Hey Emma, where are you? I'm at table 7, looking forward to meeting you." "Kevin." Emma froze, her face flushed with embarrassment. She looked up at the man across from her. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kevin's smile faltered. He hesitated for a moment, guilt flashing in his eyes. "No, I'm not." Emma's stomach churned as she stood up quickly, grabbing her coat in a rush. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table. This is so embarrassing." She barely heard him call after her as she fled the restaurant, her face burning with shame. Kevin watched her go, a strange mix of regret and curiosity swirling in his chest. He had planned on correcting her from the start, but for some reason, he hadn't. And now, as she disappeared through the door, he found himself wondering if he'd ever see her again, and why the thought of never seeing her again bothered him so much. After Emma rushed out of the restaurant, her heart pounded in her chest, and she could barely breathe. She had just realized the mistake she made sitting at the wrong table, completely embarrassed in front of a stranger who turned out to be someone she couldn't even begin to imagine. As she ran down the street, her face burning with humiliation, she tried to shake off the awkwardness. She had never been this embarrassed in her life, but there was no time to dwell on it. She had to get back to her life, her shift at the diner, her responsibilities. There was no room for mistakes in her world. No one would let her forget them, especially not someone like Kevin who wasn't even Kevin. She felt foolish, but she couldn't dwell on it. After all, who was he really? Just another guy in a restaurant, nothing more. But as the days passed, Emma couldn't help but think about him. The way he had smiled at her, the way he listened so intently, as if he genuinely cared about what she had to say. He wasn't like the other men she'd met. Not that it mattered. After all, he had never even told her his real name. He wasn't part of her world. She couldn't afford to think about people like him. Still, she found herself imagining the conversation over and over in her head, wishing it had gone differently. One rainy afternoon, a few days after the mix-up, Emma found herself at the local coffee shop. It wasn't much, just a small, cozy place where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the sound of indie music played softly in the background. As she waited in line, her thoughts kept drifting back to that night. She didn't expect to see him again, but what if she did? What if fate had other plans? Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her daydream. It was a text from Jenny, her best friend. "You'll never guess who I just saw." Emma sighed and opened the message. To her surprise, the name at the bottom of the screen made her stomach flip. It was him, Liam Parker, the CEO she had accidentally met. Jenny had run into him at an art gallery opening, and he'd mentioned Emma by name. The message went on. "He asked about you, said you were sweet. Told me you two should meet up again. Thought you might want to know." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure how to feel. He asked about her? He actually remembered her? For a moment, the world around her seemed to fade away. She had a million thoughts rushing through her mind, but one stood out. Why would he be interested in someone like her? She wasn't the type of girl men like Liam Parker would take notice of. She was just a waitress, barely scraping by. But what if he wasn't like the others? What if he actually wanted to get to know her? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The next day, Emma sat nervously at her small kitchen table staring at her phone. She debated whether or not to text him back. What would she even say? Should she ignore the whole thing? After all, it was just a mix-up. She didn't belong in his world. He was a millionaire CEO, and she was a girl who could barely make rent. But then, something inside her told her she had nothing to lose. She had to at least give it a chance. So she typed a quick message, her fingers trembling. "Hi Liam, it's Emma. I didn't expect to hear from you again, but I'm glad you reached out." She paused before hitting send, unsure of what would come next. "Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime." "No pressure. Y'all may." When she sent the message, she felt a mix of relief and anxiety. What if he thought she was just trying to get close to him for his money? That was the last thing she wanted. She had always prided herself on being independent, not relying on anyone, especially not a man with so much power and wealth. But something about Liam had sparked her curiosity. She couldn't ignore it, so she waited. Hours passed, and just as she was starting to give up hope, her phone buzzed again. It was a reply from Liam. "I'd love to meet for coffee. How about tomorrow afternoon at the place near your diner? I know a quiet spot there." Emma couldn't believe her eyes. She stared at the message for a moment before letting out a shaky breath. He actually wanted to meet her again. The next afternoon, Emma found herself sitting in the quiet corner of the coffee shop, her hands nervously fidgeting with her cup. She had dressed carefully, trying to look her best without overdoing it. Her heart raced as the door opened, and Liam walked in. He looked as calm and collected as ever, his stylish suit contrasting sharply with the casual environment. He looked around, his gaze landing on her, and he smiled warmly. "Hi, Emma," he said, his voice smooth, almost familiar. She stood up quickly, feeling a bit flustered, and shook his hand. "Hi, Liam. Thanks for meeting me here." "It's my pleasure," he replied, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her. "I'm glad we could reconnect." He smiled again, and Emma couldn't help but feel a flutter in her chest. Was it possible that he wasn't just being polite? That maybe, just maybe, he was actually interested in her? As they sat and talked, Emma found herself opening up in a way she hadn't with anyone in a long time. They discussed everything: her dreams, her struggles, the little things that made her who she was. And with every word, she began to feel a connection growing between them. It was easy to forget that he was a CEO, that his world was so different from hers. He was just Liam, and for the first time in a long while she felt like she belonged somewhere. As the days went by, Emma and Liam began meeting more often. Their coffee shop rendezvous turned into long walks in the park, and soon they started spending entire afternoons together, talking about everything and anything. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in a long time, and every time they met she felt a little lighter, as though Liam's presence had a way of melting the weight of her worries. She was still skeptical, unsure of why he kept wanting to spend time with her, but the connection between them was undeniable. He listened to her with such intent, and she felt like he truly cared, not because of her struggles, but because of who she was. For the first time in ages, Emma started to believe that maybe she was worth more than just the small life she had built for herself. One afternoon, they were sitting on a bench in the park, enjoying the crisp autumn air, when Liam turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You've told me so much about your dreams, Emma, but I want to ask you something." He paused, his voice soft but serious. "What would you do if you had the chance to really pursue them? If money wasn't an issue, what would you create?" Emma looked at him, taken aback by the question. It wasn't something she had ever really allowed herself to think about. She had always told herself she couldn't afford to dream that big, not with her bills, her rent, her daily struggles. But now, sitting here with Liam, the possibility of something more seemed so close. She could feel the spark of hope igniting in her chest. "I don't know," Emma said, her voice wavering. "I guess I've always wanted to open my own art studio, you know. Somewhere small, intimate, where I can teach others to create the way I always wanted to. But it just feels like a pipe dream." She glanced down at her hands, feeling embarrassed by her own words. "I don't have the money or the connections. I'm just a waitress," she said the last part, with a tinge of regret in her voice, as though she was ashamed of her current reality. Liam's expression softened as he listened, his eyes never leaving hers. "Why do you think you're just a waitress?" Liam asked, his voice gentle. "You're so much more than that, Emma. You have talent, passion, a drive that most people would kill for. Don't let anyone, especially yourself, tell you that you're just one thing. You can be anything you want." Emma blinked, surprised by his words. She hadn't expected him to say something like that, especially not someone with his success. But there was sincerity in his voice, and something in her stirred, something she hadn't felt in a long time, a glimmer of belief in herself. She didn't know what to say. She hadn't really allowed herself to dream like that for so long. It felt foreign, almost like a betrayal of the life she had been living. But at the same time, it was a little freeing. What if she could do it? What if she could actually create the life she wanted, no matter where she came from? The idea was overwhelming, but exhilarating. The conversation drifted to other topics, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between them. It was more than just friendship now, more than just two people who happened to meet by mistake. Every time they talked, there was an unspoken connection growing stronger. Emma found herself opening up to Liam in ways she never had before, revealing the parts of herself she usually kept hidden, the insecurities, the fears, the dreams that she never thought she could reach. And he listened, never judging, never pushing, but always encouraging. A few days later, Liam invited her to an art gallery opening he was hosting for a charity event. Emma hesitated at first. She didn't know if she belonged in that kind of world, but Liam assured her that it was important to him that she came. "It'll be fun," he promised, his smile warm and inviting. "And I'd love for you to be there with me." The night of the event, Emma stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her dress. She felt out of place, like she was stepping into a world she wasn't meant to be in. But then she remembered Liam's words, how he believed in her, how he saw something in her that she hadn't seen in herself. With a deep breath, she grabbed her purse and headed out the door. She didn't know what would happen that night, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to take a chance. At the gallery, Emma's eyes widened as she walked through the grand space, taking in the stunning artwork on the walls, the elegant crowd mingling and laughing. It was beautiful, and she felt so small in comparison. But then she saw Liam, standing by the center of the room, his presence commanding yet somehow calming. As soon as he saw her, he smiled and walked over to greet her. "You made it," he said, his voice full of warmth. "I'm so glad you're here." Emma smiled back, her nervousness easing slightly as she took in the sight of him. For the first time, she realized that despite the wealth, the success, and the world he came from, Liam wasn't like the others. He didn't see her as someone beneath him. He saw her as an equal, and that realization made her heart flutter in ways she couldn't explain. "I'm glad to be here," she said softly, her gaze meeting his. "Thank you for inviting me." The art gallery was in full swing, the clinking of glasses and soft chatter filling the air as Emma walked alongside Liam. As she looked around, her mind raced, still processing the stunning atmosphere. This was a world she wasn't used to. Everything felt polished, elegant, and so out of reach. She felt like a fish out of water, yet somehow Liam made her feel like she belonged. He kept her close, introducing her to a few people in a way that was warm, unpretentious, and kind. As they walked, she noticed the way people looked at him: respect, admiration, and a hint of curiosity. Liam was no ordinary man, and yet he never seemed to make anyone feel beneath him. He made sure to ask how she was, listened to her words, and made her laugh with his easygoing jokes. It was as if he was constantly reminding her that she mattered, not because of her circumstances, but because of who she was as a person. The evening passed in a haze of conversations, but Emma couldn't help but feel more and more drawn to Liam. There was something about him: his kindness, his attention, the way he looked at her as though she was the most important person in the room. But there was also the nagging voice in the back of her mind. He was a millionaire, a CEO, and she was just a waitress. She knew their worlds were different, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something genuine between them. Was it possible for someone like her to truly connect with someone like him? Could someone as successful as Liam actually see her as an equal? The event came to a close, and as they walked out of the gallery, the cool night air greeted them. Liam glanced at her with a smile. "I'm really glad you came tonight," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "You looked amazing, by the way." Emma blushed, unsure how to respond. "Thanks," she said quietly, her heart fluttering. They stopped for a moment at the entrance of the gallery, the streetlights casting a soft glow on their faces. Liam took a step closer to her, his expression serious now, almost as if he was contemplating something. "Emma," he began, his voice steady but carrying a weight of emotion she hadn't expected. "I really enjoy spending time with you. I'm not just saying that because you're a beautiful woman. I'm saying that because you're real. You're honest, and you don't try to be someone you're not. And I admire that." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The way he looked at her, with such intensity, made her heart skip a beat. She hadn't expected him to say something like that, not in a million years. "Liam, I lie," she started, but her words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say. The truth was, she felt the same way. She had grown so comfortable with him, so drawn to his presence, that she couldn't help but wonder if there could be more between them. But the doubts crept in again, the worries about their different worlds. She was just a girl from the wrong side of town, and he was a man with a fortune and a lifestyle she couldn't even begin to imagine. How could they ever make it work? He reached out, gently taking her hand in his touch warm and comforting. "You don't have to say anything, Emma. I just want you to know that I'm here. I want to get to know you more. All of you." His words were simple, but they carried a weight of sincerity that made her heart ache. She looked up at him, her mind racing. Could this be real? Could someone like Liam really want to be with someone like her? For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of someone who saw her for who she truly was. They walked in silence for a few moments, the only sound the soft rustle of the leaves in the breeze and the distant hum of traffic. Emma squeezed his hand gently, the warmth of his touch reassuring her, as though everything might just be okay. They reached a small park bench nearby and sat down together, the world around them fading into the background as they simply sat in the quiet company of each other. After a while, Emma broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Liam, I've been thinking a lot about us." "Yes." She hesitated, unsure if she should say what was on her mind. But he was patient, waiting for her to continue. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I don't want to mess things up. I don't want to get too attached to someone who's not like me. We're from different worlds, Liam." Her words felt heavy, as though a weight had been lifted off her chest just by saying them out loud. He turned to her, his expression soft but unwavering. "Emma, I don't care about our differences. I care about you. And that's all that matters to me right now." He paused for a moment, and then added, "I want to give this a chance if you do too." Her heart skipped a beat. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something real. She looked at Liam, really looked at him, and saw not just a millionaire CEO, but a man who was willing to see her, to understand her. and that was all she needed to take a chance on this. She smiled, her eyes meeting his. "I want to give this a chance too," she whispered, her voice filled with hope. And as they sat there, their hands intertwined, it felt like the beginning of something beautiful, something that, for once, didn't depend on who they were, but on who they were together. The following days after their heart-to-heart conversation were filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness for Emma. It was as if something had shifted between her and Liam, something deeper, more real. They began seeing each other more often, their meetings feeling less like coincidences and more like a natural rhythm they both enjoyed. Emma, who had always been the cautious type, found herself letting go of the walls she had built around her heart. With Liam, it was different. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't just interested in her for her appearance or her past. He seemed genuinely invested in who she was, in what made her tick. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe that someone like him could love someone like her. One afternoon, after a quiet lunch at a small diner, Liam suggested they take a walk through the park. Emma agreed, happy to spend time with him, though the usual apprehension lingered in the back of her mind. They walked side by side, the cool breeze rustling the leaves overhead, the park almost empty, with only a few people walking their dogs or sitting on benches. It was peaceful, calm, and Emma found herself feeling more at ease than ever before. Liam's hand brushed against hers, and for a split second, she felt her heart race. She glanced at him, meeting his eyes, and he smiled softly. The warmth in his expression made her feel as though the world had slowed down just for them. "You know," Liam began, breaking the silence between them, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other night, about your dreams. I think you should go for it, Emma. Open that studio. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because that moment might never come. You deserve to have everything you want." His words caught Emma off guard. She had heard encouragement before, but there was something different about the way Liam said it. It wasn't just words of comfort. There was a real conviction behind them, as if he truly believed in her. And for the first time, she found herself considering it. Maybe she could do it. Maybe she wasn't just a waitress with a dream. Maybe she could turn that dream into a reality. They sat down on a bench in the park, the soft hum of the city in the distance, but the moment felt timeless. Emma looked at Liam, her heart full of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, she was overwhelmed with gratitude for his belief in her, but on the other, the fears she had tried to ignore crept back in. "But Liam, I don't know if I'm cut out for it. I don't have the resources, the connections. I've been so focused on just getting by that I don't even know where to start. I feel like I'm always just falling short." She bit her lip, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Liam listened intently, his hand gently squeezing hers. "Emma, you've already got the most important thing you need, passion. The rest will fall into place. And if you ever need help, if you need someone to lean on, I'll be here. I believe in you, and I know you can do this." His words were so sincere, they left Emma speechless. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear them. The weight she had been carrying, the fear, the doubt felt a little lighter after hearing him speak. As they continued to sit there, the world around them seemed to disappear, and Emma realized that for the first time, she didn't feel like she was just surviving. She was living, and she had the chance to make something of herself, something more than she had ever imagined. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do it alone. Over the next few weeks, Emma took the first steps toward her dream. With Liam's encouragement, she started looking into local spaces for her art studio, researching what it would take to get started. She applied for a small business loan, something she had always thought was out of her reach. And each time she spoke to Liam, she felt a renewed sense of confidence. His belief in her was infectious, and slowly, she began to believe in herself too. One evening, after a long day of working at the diner, Emma met Liam at the coffee shop they often frequented. They sat at their usual corner, sipping coffee and talking about their day. It was a simple, quiet moment, but it meant everything to Emma. "Liam," she began, her voice filled with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you. You've helped me see that I'm capable of so much more than I ever thought. I'm finally taking the steps I need to make my dream a reality." She smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. Liam smiled back, his eyes warm. "I'm proud of you, Emma. You've always had it in you. I'm just glad I could be there to remind you." His voice was soft, but it carried so much meaning, so much sincerity. Emma couldn't help but feel the warmth of his words wrap around her like a blanket. As they sat there together, In that small coffee shop that had become a haven for them, Emma realized that she wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. She was building a life, a future, and she had someone who truly saw her for who she was. Someone who believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. And for the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to feel hopeful, to feel like she deserved everything she was working toward. Liam had opened her eyes to a new world, and she was ready to take the leap. With every step she took, she felt closer to the woman she had always wanted to be. And with Liam by her side, she knew she could face anything that came her way. Emma's days had begun to feel different. Every step she took toward her dream felt more real, more attainable. With Liam's unwavering support, she had found the courage to pursue something that had once seemed impossible. The loan application had been approved, and she had found the perfect little space for her art studio. It was small, but it had character. The moment she stepped inside, she could already imagine the walls adorned with paintings, the soft hum of creativity filling the air. It was everything she had dreamed of. The studio was no longer just a pipe dream, it was a work in progress, and she was the one making it happen. She had always thought that the path to her dream would be paved with struggle and disappointment. But now, with Liam by her side, it felt like she could finally breathe. Every time she doubted herself, every time the fear crept in, Liam was there to remind her of her potential. He was always the first to celebrate her small victories, and his belief in her made her feel like she was capable of achieving anything. Slowly, she started to believe it too. One evening, after a long day of painting and organizing the space for her new studio, Emma sat down to rest, exhausted but content. She had just finished setting up the first exhibition of her work, which was going to be held the following week. She couldn't believe how far she had come. A year ago, she would have never imagined that she would be opening her own studio, much less exhibiting her art for the first time. But here she was, making it all happen. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up, expecting a message from Jenny, but to her surprise, it was from Liam. The text read, "I've been thinking about something, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Can we meet tonight?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what Liam could want to discuss, but the fact that he wanted to meet her made her stomach flutter. She quickly texted back, "Of course, I'll be there." Hui. Later that evening, they met at the small cafe they frequented. Liam was already sitting at their usual table, his expression unreadable. As Emma sat down across from him, she couldn't help but notice the serious look in his eyes. "Liam, what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked at her for a moment, as if debating whether to say what was on his mind. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his voice soft but firm. "And I want to be honest with you, Emma. I've developed feelings for you, strong ones. I know that we come from different worlds, and I know that this may seem complicated, but I can't ignore how I feel. I think about you constantly, and I want to see where this goes." Emma's heart raced as his words sank in. She had known, deep down, that something was growing between them, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel more real. She had always been cautious, always afraid of getting hurt, but with Liam, everything felt different. She had never felt so seen, so understood. "Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I feel the same way. I've been afraid to admit it, but I care about you. A lot. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the words hung in the air, and Emma felt like the world had shifted beneath her feet. Liam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I'm glad to hear you say that," he said quietly, his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. "I don't know where this will lead, but I want to explore it with you. I want to see what we can build together." Emma looked at him, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't quite name. She had always been afraid of love, afraid of vulnerability, but with Liam, it felt natural. It felt right. She had spent so many years hiding from her feelings, from the possibility of being hurt, but now she was ready to take a leap of faith. "I want that too," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "I want to see where this goes, Liam. I'm ready to take that chance with you." The smile that spread across Liam's face was enough to melt Emma's heart. In that moment, everything felt clear. She had spent so long questioning whether she was enough, whether she could ever deserve a love like this. But now, with Liam by her side, she knew that she was. And she knew that this was only the beginning of their story. As they sat there, hand in hand, Emma realized that the journey she had begun, the one that started with a mistake and a blind date, had led her to something far greater than she could have ever imagined. It had led her to love, to a future she could build with someone who saw her, truly saw her, for who she was. And in that moment, Emma knew that everything was about to change for the better. After their conversation at the cafe, Emma felt lighter than she had in weeks. Everything had shifted between her and Liam, but in the most unexpected way. For so long, she had held herself back, unsure of what it meant to love and be loved in return. Now, with Liam's confession, everything seemed to fall into place. She wasn't just pursuing her dreams anymore, she was doing it with him by her side. And that made all the difference. They continued to see each other, and each time they met, it felt like they were building something new, something real. In the days that followed, Liam kept his promise to Emma. He didn't just talk about supporting her dreams, he actively helped her. Whether it was making calls to people who could assist with her studio's launch or offering advice on marketing, Liam was there. He wasn't trying to take over, he was just helping her navigate the path she had chosen for herself. Emma was amazed at how natural it all felt. He was always there when she needed him, but never overbearing. His belief in her seemed to give her the confidence to keep going, even when things got tough. One night, after a long day of painting and setting up her studio, Emma sat down to take a break. Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up to see a message from Liam. "I have a surprise for you. Meet me at the park in an hour." Emma's curiosity piqued, and a sense of excitement bubbled up inside her. She quickly finished up her work and headed to the park. When she arrived, Liam was standing by a small fountain, holding a large bouquet of flowers. Emma couldn't help but smile at the sight of him. "What's all this for?" she asked, her heart fluttering. He handed her the flowers, his smile wide and genuine. "Just because," Liam said, his voice soft. "Because I'm proud of you. Because you've come so far, and I want to be here to celebrate every step you take." Emma's eyes filled with emotion as she looked at the flowers, then back at Liam. She had never expected this kind of support from anyone, let alone from someone like him. She had always been the one to hold everything together, the one who had to fight for what she wanted. But with Liam, it was different. He didn't expect anything from her. He simply wanted to see her succeed. "Thank you," Emma whispered, her voice shaky with gratitude. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Liam stepped closer to her, his eyes searching hers. "I do, Emma," he said quietly. "I know exactly how much it means. And I'm here for all of it. I'm here for you." Tumdolf. As Emma looked up at him, her heart swelled with a mixture of love and awe. She never imagined she would find someone who would believe in her so fully, who would be there to support her not just in her dreams, but in her life. She had come to realize that love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was about showing up for each other, day after day, and being there when it mattered most. With Liam, that's exactly what she felt. He was there for her, and she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be there for herself too. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Emma worked tirelessly to get her studio ready for its grand opening. She had spent so long dreaming of this moment, but now that it was finally happening, the pressure was overwhelming. There were endless details to take care of, and at times, she felt like she might buckle under the weight of it all. But every time she thought about giving up, she thought about Liam. He had been there for her from the very beginning, always believing in her, always encouraging her. And somehow, that gave her the strength to keep going. The day of the grand opening arrived, and Emma stood in front of her studio, a mixture of excitement and nerves swirling inside her. The door opened, and people started to trickle in: friends, family, even strangers who had heard about the event. But the one person Emma was looking for, the one person who made everything feel real, was Liam. She found him standing by the entrance, looking at her with a proud smile on his face. He walked over to her, his arms open. "You did it, Emma," he said softly. "I knew you could." She wrapped her arms around him, the weight of the moment hitting her all at once. She had done it. She had opened her own studio, and it felt like the beginning of a whole new chapter. She was no longer just dreaming about the life she wanted. She was living it. As the evening wore on, Emma took a moment to step outside and take it all in. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance, and the sounds of laughter and conversation floated out from the studio behind her. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and it had all paid off. But more than anything, she was grateful for the people who had supported her along the way, especially Liam. He had been there for her in ways she never expected, and now, as she stood in front of the studio she had built with her own hands, she knew that she was ready for whatever came next. The future felt wide open, and for the first time, Emma wasn't afraid. With Liam by her side, she knew that anything was possible. As the weeks passed, Emma's life began to settle into a new rhythm. Her studio was thriving, and she had even started to teach a few art classes, something she had always dreamed of doing. The more time she spent at her studio, the more she realized how far she had come. It wasn't just the studio itself that was growing, it was her confidence, her sense of self-worth, and the belief that anything was possible. Every day, she woke up with a sense of purpose, eager to create, to teach, and to share her passion with others. Throughout all of this, Liam remained a constant presence in her life. He had been there for every step of her journey, offering his support, encouragement, and love. Every time she faced a challenge or felt overwhelmed, he was there, reminding her of her strength and lifting her up when she needed it most. They spent more time together, going on quiet walks, cooking dinner together, or simply sitting and talking about their hopes for the future. Emma had never known a love so steady, so grounding. Liam's calm and unwavering support made her feel like anything was possible. But despite all the progress she had made, there were still moments when Emma felt the weight of her past creeping in. The doubt, the fear of not being good enough, the worry that one day it might all fall apart. It was hard to shake the feeling that she didn't deserve all the good things happening in her life. She knew she had worked hard for it, but a part of her still felt like an imposter, like she didn't belong in this new world she had created for herself. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, Emma sat alone in her studio, staring at a canvas she had been working on. She had been struggling with this piece for days, unsure of where to take it. The paintbrush in her hand felt heavy, as though it symbolized the weight of her thoughts. Her mind was clouded with self-doubt. She could hear the faint hum of the city outside, but inside the studio, everything felt still and quiet, as if the world had paused. She set down the paintbrush, running her hands through her hair, feeling the familiar frustration bubbling up. Just then, she heard the sound of the door opening. Liam walked in, his familiar presence filling the room with warmth. He looked at her with concern, sensing the heaviness in the air. "Hey," he said softly, "what's going on?" Emma sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I don't know. I just feel like I'm not good enough. This painting is a mess, and nothing I do seems to turn out right. I keep thinking maybe this whole thing, this studio, this dream, it's just too much for me. Maybe I'm not cut out for it." Liam walked over and sat beside her, his gaze steady and reassuring. "Emma, you've come so far. You've built something from nothing, and that takes more strength than most people will ever know. You're not perfect, and you don't need to be. What you're doing here, what you've created, it's real. You have talent, and you have heart. Don't let a bad day or a tough painting make you forget that." Emma looked at him, her chest tightening as his words sank in. It was hard to believe sometimes, especially on days like today, when everything seemed like it was falling apart. But the way Liam looked at her, with such love and belief, made her feel like maybe she could believe in herself too. She took a deep breath, letting his words wash over her. "I just feel like I don't deserve this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't deserve all the good things that are happening. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." Liam's hand reached out, gently taking hers. "Emma, you've worked for everything you have. You've fought for it. You're worthy of all of it. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here for you. I always will be." The sincerity in his voice, the steadiness of his touch, made Emma's heart swell with emotion. She had always been afraid of being let down, of trusting too much, but with Liam it felt different. He wasn't just saying words, he was showing her every day what it meant to be loved, to be supported, to be enough. That night, as they sat together in the studio, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The self-doubt was still there, but it didn't feel as overwhelming. With Liam by her side, she realized that she didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have it all figured out. She just had to keep going, keep creating, and keep believing in herself. The next day, Emma returned to her painting with a new sense of purpose. It didn't matter if it was perfect. What mattered was that it was hers. She let the brush move freely across the canvas, the strokes coming easier now, as if the weight had been lifted. She didn't know where this journey would take her, but with Liam's love and her own determination, she knew that she was exactly where she needed to be. And for the first time, Emma didn't feel like an imposter in her own life. She felt like she belonged, and that was enough. As the months passed, Emma's art studio became more than just a place to work at, became a symbol of everything she had overcome. It was a constant reminder that dreams, no matter how big, could come true with hard work, determination, and the right people by your side. With Liam's support, Emma had built something that was hers, something that reflected her passions and her heart. Each day, she found herself growing more confident, more comfortable in her own skin, and more certain that she was on the right path. She had stopped doubting her worth, stopped wondering if she belonged in this world she was creating. Now she knew she did. As the grand opening of her studio's first major exhibition approached, Emma couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. She had poured everything into this event, and the pressure to make it perfect weighed heavily on her shoulders. But as always, Liam was there to help ease her mind. They spent evenings together, going over the final details, setting up the gallery space, and making sure everything was just right. He never once made her feel like she wasn't capable of handling it on her own. He simply offered his support in the quietest, most genuine way possible. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery was filled with people from all walks of life: art lovers, collectors, friends, and family. Emma stood at the entrance, her heart racing as she watched people admire her work. She had come so far from the woman who had once doubted whether she could even make a living from her art. Now, seeing the joy on people's faces as they stood in front of her paintings, she knew that every struggle, every doubt, and every moment of fear had been worth it. Liam stood beside her, his presence as steady as ever. He had been with her through every high and every low, and tonight, as he watched her interact with the guests, he couldn't help but feel proud. He knew that Emma had created something beautiful, not just in her art but in the life she was building for herself, and he had been lucky enough to witness it all. As the night wore on, Liam pulled Emma aside for a moment of quiet. The soft hum of the gallery filled the background, but in that moment, it felt like the two of them were the only ones in the world. He looked at her with a soft smile, his eyes full of admiration. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice gentle but full of meaning. "You've done something incredible here, Emma. You've built a life you can be proud of." "Kate." Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied softly. "You've been there for me through everything. I never would have made it this far if you hadn't believed in me." Liam took her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "I've always believed in you, Emma," he said quietly. "From the moment we met, I knew you had something special, and I'm just glad I got to be part of this journey with you." As the night came to a close, Emma stood at the door of her studio, looking around at the people who had come to celebrate her success. She felt a sense of peace wash over her. This wasn't just the end of an event, it was the beginning of something new. A new chapter in her life, one where she no longer doubted her worth, where she embraced every challenge with open arms, and where love and support were always just a step away. As she turned to Liam, her heart full of warmth, she realized that she had everything she needed right here: a passion for her art, the courage to pursue her dreams, and the love of someone who saw her for who she truly was. "Thank you," she whispered to him, her voice full of emotion. "For everything." Liam smiled and pulled her into a warm embrace. "You don't have to thank me," he said softly. "You've done all the hard work. I'm just glad I could be here with you." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Emma knew that no matter what the future held, she was ready for it. She had built something beautiful, something that was all her own. And with Liam by her side, there was nothing she couldn't face. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in her life, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be,